what I saw was that the marketplace for hiring top level consultants is broken. It's very much a Rolodex, who you know, not what you know. And then there's just no accountability within the firms on delivering quality services. You end up with a few players that do really bad.
The water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We're talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
All right, Alex from Topline.com. Welcome to Founder Secrets.
Great to see you guys.
So I should, in fair disclosures, I'm like a very tiny investor in Topline, very proud investor. We met through one of your co-founders, Chris, which I'll ask you about later. And but I wanted to get us started by asking, you're in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, not North Carolina, which also has a Mount Pleasant. Not as glorious.
I think there's probably a Mount Pleasant in every state.
Yeah, I think there's one in New York too.
Usually it's not even a mountain of any kind. I don't even know why they're named that.
It's in the basement.
But so how would you start a startup there? Just seems like, I moved to New York to start a company from North Carolina. And so I guess I'm wondering how you do it. Obviously everybody's remote now, but what's the community like there in the Charleston area? Do you interact with other startups? Why'd you decide to do it there?
Yeah. So I think the world has changed a lot since my first company. I had been in DC for about 12 years and had multiple companies that were in the political and advocacy space. So it made a lot of sense to be in DC. And I think there are definitely huge advantages to picking a city that's the center of whatever industry you're playing in. You just have these happenstance meetings, you meet people, you go to events, and it does give you an unfair advantage. And I think part of building a startup is collecting as many unfair advantages as you can, because it's very hard to compete with incumbents. That being said, I think for me, I think the world's changed enough now where I think that in a lot of ways, very early stage companies, it's almost more advantageous to be fully remote from a talent perspective. We have talent in our company that's completely global, and being able to recruit people even in the US that can work from home, and we have systems in place to make sure work's getting done, and we're staying on top of that. I think that's an advantage today, is being fully remote. And it's an advantage even when it comes things when you grow your company. My last company was over 100 employees, and there were huge advantages. I saw parts of our team were remote. You just kind of eliminate some of the internal politics. People can focus on just doing their work, and you don't get caught up in some of that stuff. And so,
talk about that a bit. What was your first company, if you can quickly kind of go over it, and maybe what you took away from that? Yeah,
I had decided I was a bit of a glutton for punishment, so I decided to launch kind of three things at once, which is usually not a good idea. But the way I kind of viewed it, I think this is more common now. You see these like indie hackers who have 15 products in the market.
Dude, we had one on the pod.
Yeah, we had one on the pod. He's killing it.
And it's a good way to spread your bets. And now more than ever, I saw Sam Altman did an interview where he said, there's a bet on who's going to be the first founder with $1 billion company with no employees. And I think that's possible more and more today. I kind of viewed it the same way. I was like, okay, I know that it's very hard to make one, like you want to kind of spread your bets. And I felt like I had a sure thing with my background experience, where I was located, relationships, having a digital advocacy agency in DC. And that was kind of a no-brainer. I knew I could make that business work. And at least like that would allow me to go work for myself, work with clients, understand the things that they needed built, and would give me an unfair advantage to build products for my own clients. And that worked out really well. So that company was called Image. I had another company called IJ Review. It was it still is a news site. It was early kind of the first news site that was a bet that social media would change how people consume news. And so I started that as kind of a side project all the way back in 2009 when Facebook pages were just announced. And back in those days, you could build Facebook audience for a penny per like with ease.
Yeah.
So
it's like the Farmville days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Farmville. Yeah. Even before those days. So I just had built these massive audiences on Facebook and had these content sites where I would drive traffic and just monetize it through programmatic advertising, and it worked really well. And so had that company, had the agency, and then had a product company where we had a lot of clients that did online donations, whether it was in the advocacy space or the political space. And so built a company to essentially process payments online. And I worked with Republicans, and we didn't have a product that was like Act Blue. And so created something like that. And eventually that kind of morphed into a life of its own, and became a smaller part of that. And one of my clients actually built on top of it. And that is now kind of powering the entire donation processing for the Republican Party. It's called Win Red. And so every Republican in America uses that now.
You started that?
It was started at my agency, Image Labs, called Charge. And one of my customers wanted to basically take it and run with it. And so we teamed up and turned it into what became Rev. And then Rev kind of became Win Red. So I'm no longer a part of it. I sold my interest. But yes, it was formed at Image Labs, IMGE, way back in the day. So that was kind of the third prong, and ultimately they all kind of took off in their own direction, had a life of their own. But it just became challenging to manage. Like, it worked at a certain point, but at a certain point, like, you need leadership at each organization, and I was spread a little thin. So, a lot of lessons learned, but it was a great ride.
What is it like working in politics or in a business that's in politics? Is it just curious what you think.
Well, it was different in I think until like 2016. Nobody really paid attention. It was kind of something people paid attention to during election time. I think the Trump era of politics turned it into kind of headline news every day, every week. You can see that it's reflected in the ratings. And then it just became much more scrutinized and some sharper elbows, and it kind of became a lot more difficult to be in the business of politics, I think, in the post-Trump era.
Less fun.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let's get to topline.com. First of all, how did you even get the domain topline.com?
Amazing domain name.
Yeah, I bought it back in 2018 or 17.
Can you share for how much?
Or an idea?
Ballpark?
No, yeah. 63,000, right around there.
That's a good deal.
Good deal.
Actually, I just, as a side note, sorry to interrupt, but this is a stupid thing. I was thinking about buying my first name, but without the first letter. So it'd be like, my email could be like f@laview.com, which is like a stupid thing. It's a very stupid thing that I just Googled one day. And then I just casually, it was for sale. So I was like, hey guys, what's it cost? And the guy, formal response, like, well, how much would you bid? And I was like, $500. And the guy responds like, this goes for $300,000. Dude, this is such a joke. But anyways, that's all to say that getting topline.com for 60 grand is a good deal. Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of domain names. I feel like they are the original NFT. Like, it's a digital asset that has real value.
So true.
I don't know why people didn't just bet big. Like, in that era where you were paying $400,000 for a JPEG, like, go buy a great domain name.
Completely agree.
A different story, by the way. I tried to buy Troy.com from this guy who did what you just said back in the 90s. He bought Troy.com and he wouldn't sell it. He thought he was going to build this crypto thing. So he said no price. He wouldn't even entertain an offer. And now crypto's not, wasn't doing so well. So he came back and was like, okay, I'll sell it for $1 million.
Oh,
wow. So congrats on that. And so did you when you bought it, I guess did you already
every entrepreneur probably has a list of domain names
right.
they own as well. Yeah.
We all want.
So did you think Topline was going to be what it is today, or did you buy it for a different reason?
No, I thought this is exactly what I wanted to build. I think.
What is that exactly? What was the idea?
So having a consulting firm for a number of years, I think that what I saw was that the marketplace for hiring top level consultants is broken. It's very much a Rolodex, who you know, not what you know. And then there's just no accountability within the firms on delivering quality services. And so, you end up with just a few players that do really bad work. And not all the time. I mean, that's the thing too, is they're great people at firms. There are some people that deliver and do a great job. And then there are others that give the rest of the firm kind of a bad name. And it's really hard as a partner in a firm to know who the partners are that have great reputations and who the associates are that are doing well. And the marketplace doesn't really reward the best performers. It rewards the best promoters. And the idea for Topline was to take what is standard in almost every other industry, where you have accountability and you have reputational metrics and clients can rate you, whether it's care.com with nannies or, Yelp with restaurants or, hairdressers. There's all these trades and industries where it's very common that people are rated and reviewed and they build their own reputation independent of the companies they work for. And I think that hasn't really translated to the consulting world yet. And so the idea is, let's level the playing field. Let's let the great providers stand on their own 2 feet, whether they work at McKinsey or Bain or they're independent or they have a small startup firm. Let's kind of let everybody have their own profile, their own reputation, and then let organizations not just go hire, lazy organizations, just go hire the big firm and then get stuck with an associate. But let's have a real search process where you go out and you find the best talent, the best knowledge worker available for your job, regardless of where they work or where they live or what school they went to or who they know. Let's just hire the best. And that's the idea for Topline. So it actually means, if you look at Topline, the meaning, reason we love it is it kind of represents what we are, which is we want to help professionals get back to their profession by getting discovered and getting hired, and giving them the tools to kind of manage their entire business in the business of, consulting or advisory work, to manage that in one place. And we have Topline OS to do that. And that's our product in the market now. So you can either work with us from a software perspective, or you can work with us. Topline Butler is a completely disruptive product because you get a dedicated resource, you get unlimited sort of features, contacts, opportunities, pipelines with the software. And then you get a dedicated resource and a team of experts that you can do a la carte services with. So you get a US-based expert that is in your industry, that works with clients like you, that sort of knows the playbooks to run to help you grow your firm and manage your sales, your full funnel. And then you also have a team of experts behind them who are based globally and at a really low cost can provide sort of the standard marketing, customer success, sales projects you need. And then on the other end, Topline also means of the highest quality or ranking. And that's what we do for organizations. We help them find the talent or the firms that can best meet their needs.
I think that depending on who you talk to, they have different perspectives on consulting, right? Or on consultants in general, and some of the, very prestigious consulting firms like McKinsey, have not had great press as of late and have been doing things that maybe they wouldn't have done 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, or weren't the culture of the firms, a long time ago. And then, consulting as a whole is really ballooned. It's a much bigger industry today than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's a much bigger, this kind of advisory and all of this has really grown as a segment of the economy. And I'm curious what you think of that. Like, do you think that the industry will continue to grow? I mean, obviously you think it's valuable. You wouldn't be in this, the kind of segment of the market that you're in. Are there certain businesses that you think benefit a lot more from this type of work or certain industries? And then are there some where you think that they wouldn't benefit as much, like startups maybe won't benefit as much? Or do you think it could be helpful for everybody?
I mean, I think we're only going to see the trend lines increase. If you look at the amount of knowledge workers in the US, it's 100 million people that consider themselves knowledge workers just in the US alone. So massive, massive group of people. And I think there's a trend towards more fractional work too. If you look at the trend lines in the US around W-2 versus 1099 work, by 2027, it was only 6% in 1989. And by 2027, the majority of the American workforce will do some portion of freelance work, some portion of 1099 work, the majority of the American workforce. And I think that what companies are seeing is that a lot of the skills they need, the talent they need doesn't need to be full-time, and that they could benefit from, instead of hiring someone full-time, just finding the right consultant, the right advisor who can quickly answer their question or work with them and sort of hold their hand through something that they're doing for the first time, and even sort of teach them how to do it to be dangerous enough to do it on their own. I think the larger the organization, probably the more inclined they are to just hire somebody and not deal with it. So I think startups probably benefit the most from fractional work, startups and smaller organizations. Because they are budget constrained, and they are, a lot of times the leadership has, most of the time they have a lot more ownership in the actual company and in the results. And so, we think that that's definitely a spot that it's going to continue to see growth is in the lower end of the market, small and medium businesses.
Oh, this is awesome, man. So I guess it seems in a lot of ways you guys are kind of a CRM. Is it with that? Or is that do you hate that term?
No, I mean, I think the product we have in the market does some of that. We call it an operating system because we feel like it goes much further than that. We have marketing tools, we have social media marketing, reporting, phone system, text message, email. I mean, it goes well beyond that. So we call it your top line operating system, right? Anything that your company needs to grow your top line, your revenue, we can help you with our software. And that's in the market today. And then, over time, we want to be able to actually help them with leads top of funnel. It's really hard B2B, consultants, advisors. It's a different process. You can't just run Google ads to go find customers or run Facebook ads. So you see a lot of cold prospecting, LinkedIn prospecting, but there's not really a good system to predictably generate leads.
By the way, you mentioned early on that a startup needs as many unfair advantages as it can get. And I'm wondering, what are some of your unfair advantages you feel like at Topline? A
couple. One, I think the team, the experience that we have. So my brother has decades of experience in kind of growth marketing for these smaller organizations. Me and Chris both have backgrounds in kind of the consulting advocacy space with software, with services. So I think that's one unfair advantage is just the team and our backgrounds. I think with the trends around technology, the ability to kind of, we have this massive data set, 700 million professionals, 54 million organizations that we've put together that is going to be going live this quarter. And the tools, the the software that's out there, the ability to build, like to take that database and spend $200 a month to host a data set that large. Those tools are available now. The ability to query that data and search it really quickly with things like TypeSense that you can just self-host and instantly find results, and use AI and vector search to kind of go through that data and use natural language to find the right professionals. Like, those things didn't exist 2 years ago. So if you just kind of like understand that, I think that's an advantage, and understand how to utilize those tools at a low cost. I think the ability to work with global talent is an advantage, and to execute services in a way that is cost effective is definitely an advantage. And then I think
TypeSense is like a search.
Yeah,
it's like a open source search.
Yeah, it's a great tool to be able to sort through 700 million records instantly, in a way that is a nice search experience. Like, just being able to take an open source tool like that costs you nothing and create. I think those are going to be the reasons why people visit Topline. Is we need to have more data on professionals than anywhere else. I think we need to be able to find and surface that information quickly. And we want to be able to do it not only through traditional kind of a search box, but also just natural language to help you find the right talent as an organization.
So you mentioned your brother.
Yes.
So did you start those other companies you mentioned with your brother?
No, this is the first chance we've had to work together.
So why'd you do it, and how is it working? We had another pair of brothers on the pod earlier, and they seemed to be faking it really well. They were like the happiest clans I've ever seen. But
smiled the whole pod.
I know. Well, what's it like for you?
It's great. I mean, you've had 30. For me, I'm 37. He's about to turn 40 this month. So 37 years of working together. You know everything about each other. You don't, you can say anything. It doesn't matter. Like, you're not going to be offended. You're not going to be upset. You're not like worried about different things. You can just eliminate all the communication issues. I think for me, that was a big part of kind of jumping in head first with Topline, was being able to do it with my brother. So, that's going to be a fun part of building it, and just kind of keeping that in mind, that's one of the main goals is just to build it with someone. I know so this is something I disagree with. Everyone says like, oh, the future is these one person indie hackers who build things on their own. That's not fun. I don't know. I just don't think that
totally.
It's just like, you're just slogging away in a room by yourself for 10 hours a day. Like, what? That's just, I don't think that's going to win.
This is what we've learned from COVID. We need more isolation.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to win the day. I think it's going to be, you improve so much quicker, and especially when you have open, candid communication and in a respectful kind of protected way like that, you're going to get much better, much faster when you can do that. And I think that a lot of these indie hackers though are recreating that with their groups, and there's they create that community and they sort of challenge each other in that way. So there's ways you can recreate it, but I just think it's a lot more fun to build with other people. That was a big goal for me, was to just build with people I really, knew well. And go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
Well, I'm just curious to expand on that. How I agree with you. In my last company, the last 8 years, I owned it by myself, and I had C-level people who are in the business too, but it's just different when they're not all owners. And in this company, I have 2 co-founders, we have investors. It's just very, very different. And I love the team aspect. Like, sure, I own a lot less of this business, but I love the team aspect. Also, everybody's more committed because they're really in it. I agree with you. It's like doing more together. But I'm curious about the website. Like the website's very kind of interactive. That there's a lot of things going on, in a good way. I think it tells a good message. Did you all do this yourself? Like how did you think of the website? did you have a firm do it? How can you kind of walk through, how do you think of positioning, because that really comes through on the website?
So I did the website myself. And there's been a lot of iterations of it. It's changed a lot over time. How do we think about it? I mean, I think there is a challenge for us right now, because we have a product that is in the market that we're selling that is not necessarily kind of how we view our core product over time. But it's been great because we have customers, we're learning a lot from them. We're growing just that product alone, 40% month over month growth, sustain that over a number of months. It can be a little confusing when you come to our site, because it's like, there's a lot, we're Topline OS over here, and then we have Topline search and then below it. And we do get some of that. Our vision is to serve both sides of the market and help professionals grow and help organizations find great professionals. So we're trying to, in the best way possible. And we've talked about some tweaks to kind of, instead of bifurcating the messaging, kind of just have a button at the top, and you can switch from almost like a professional provider side to an organization side. But there's a lot of places we can see others that have done this well. I mean, there's a ton of kind of two-sided marketplaces that exist where they're now doing kind of vertical SaaS on one. It's become more than just a two-sided marketplace now. What you see is it's sort of a vertical SaaS product plus a marketplace. I think one thing we're doing differently is we don't plan to be a marketplace. Like we don't consider our product that we're launching a marketplace. We consider it an index. We're not ever going to, well, I don't want to say ever, but right now, the plan is not to sit in the middle of those transactions in any way and take a percentage fee. We just want to help with discovery and for organizations, and then for professionals, help with generating qualified leads for them, and not try and sit in the middle and, take 20, 30%. And I think that will be more attractive for both parties ultimately.
I'm just curious, why is that? Is it because there's kind of perverse incentives with the marketplace, right? You want people off the platform so they don't pay the fees and all that?
Yeah, I don't think it aligns you with I don't think it aligns people together. There's customers and people I believe they kind of ultimately work towards incentives. Like they find their way back towards where the incentive structures are aligned. That's not for us. We don't want to fight that forever. We would rather just kind of lean into what the incentive structures that people want are and build our business around that.
Yeah, two-sided marketplaces are famously extremely difficult to build, even with a lot of money. There are many of these who have failed. But I'm curious, how do you think of, how did you get the first few customers? How do you get someone to commit to something like this? Obviously, you invested a lot of money into the Topline OS, and it's really kind of built out. But how did you get those first few customers? What was your message to them? What was your pitch? How did you get them to commit to you?
I mean, our message is we have this great comparative graphic on our site for Butler. So we're mostly our early customers are Butler customers, where they have. It's really like an agency on demand. I mean, you get all of your software, everything you could ever need. So competitive with HubSpot Enterprise. In some ways, I think we're actually superior because we have integrated phone systems, and you don't have to use, I think it's a more powerful tool. Plus you get an agency on demand. You get a dedicated resource who can help you with your advertising, who can help you with outbound, who can help you with setting up your phone system and your pipelines and your automations and workflows. So you get all of that for $397 a month. It's a no-brainer. There's nothing in the market that comes close to that value proposition. It's very easy to talk to people we know that need software to manage there's usually some kind of pain point that we can specifically address as our entry point to have a conversation. And then once you realize that, we not only solve that pain point, but you can grow with us. And as you want to take on new things, we can help you. It just becomes a no-brainer. And, one of the big pain points, I think, that small businesses have and medium-sized businesses is there are so many point solutions, but and that's one thing VCs always say is like, oh, you focus on one thing, do it the best, and then you move on. And I think that works to some extent, but for the product in the market that we're attacking, they don't want another point solution. They don't want to have 15 different apps that they use that they then have to figure out how to integrate. And then they have to, pay 15 subscriptions, and they have data silos that exist everywhere. And then, they don't want that. They want one place to go to manage their growth stack, just like I think Rippling has done on the HR side. Rippling and Gusto, there's some great HR companies. I think Rippling is kind of the most famous example. Like, they handle every part of your HR stack, every part of your people stack. They kind of do in one system. And so I think what we feel like the opportunity is that kind of that same thing for your growth stack. And then to be able to even supplement it with direct leads, people that are finding you through the index, that becomes even more powerful.
Love it. All right. So speaking of talent, though, how did you recognize your own talent, especially Chris, who we both know? I always thought he was like an amazing sales guy and super committed to his work. And then one day he comes in and he's like, I'm quitting. I'm joining these guys to be a co-founder of Topline, which, by the way, is so generous of you to bring someone as a co-founder, even though you had already done, some work already with your brother. So I'm wondering, how did you find him? How did you make the decision to bring him on? And how do you recognize talent?
Yeah, so I've known Chris for, probably a decade or more. He started his career in DC, kind of in the same space, in the same industry. And so we crossed paths a lot and always liked working with him. And he had reached out, he reached out about, I actually know what it was. It was another startup I had invested in. The CEO had emailed me and said, hey, I'm looking for a chief revenue officer. And I was like, oh, I know the perfect guy. And so I had emailed about Chris, and I think he interviewed him and it went really well. But then Chris was like, hey, what are you up to? Like, what are you up to these days? And I was like, actually, I've been working on something for a while, building a product out. And, just kind of like testing it with a few people, but really want to scale it and go all in on it. And I'd love to talk to you more about it. And so we just kind of started talking, and he had mentioned that at LSE, he had a very similar thesis as Topline Index, but he was kind of focused on social impact entrepreneurs. They're really hard to find and find out who's good. And so we just had a conversation. I invited him down to Isle of Palms, which was where I was living. And I was like, just come down. We'll do like a planning session. Got him excited, and we worked out the details, and he started a few weeks later. So I felt like it was great to have a third voice in the room. Yeah, just he's got such an interesting background and set of experiences that really is complementary and helpful. And it's great having three.
Can you speak to maybe some of the challenges as you grew? So as as the product evolves, there are a lot of elements of a business like this you have to manage, right? Growing a product, you have to get sales, you have to think about what is the future of the business. Like, can you speak to some of the challenges and things you've learned as you've grown the business?
I think that the biggest difference that this company has and others is a fully remote kind of founding team, right? So we're trying to find ways to connect constantly. So we have a morning meeting first thing in the morning, and then at the end of the day. The morning meeting is a little more structured, and then the afternoon meeting is kind of just free flowing conversations. We sort of celebrate our wins and talk about our challenges, and then we have a weekly kind of more organized, like, here's our goals for the week, here's our tasks, our projects, here's how they're tracking. And then we're doing quarterly offsites where we get together for 3 or 4 days and come up with our full goals, what we think is realistic, what are, our budgets. We reforecast and budget every quarter, and we use those quarterly offsites to kind of do that and have those conversations. And I found that cadence works really well, but that was kind of a challenge, was like, can we, we have these great offsites where we spend like 3 or 4 days together in person, and we stay up, till the wee hours of the morning just working. And it's like, sometimes you do kind of wish that everybody was in a room together all the time. But in some ways, I think this might be better because we're all focused on our lanes. We know what our individual goals are. Someone owns each goal, and then we come together. We're obviously on Slack and available whenever to kind of help answer questions, but we're able to kind of own our lane and then come together and support each other. So that's been kind of a learning lesson, is just how to manage a fully remote leadership team as well, for me at least personally.
Okay, so what advice, we wrap up here, what advice do you have for some of our listeners getting started in entrepreneurship?
Find your unfair advantages. It's always easy to kind of have an initial customer, or if you can find an initial customer that you build for, that's always a great thing. I think if you are an entrepreneur, it's not the worst idea in the world. I'm a little bit counter probably to most, but like to go work for a great company that is in the industry you want to build into and learn as much as you can and meet as many people as you can, and you'll have a huge leg up. Like I think building product for an industry you don't understand is going to be very challenging. It can be done, but I just think it's very challenging. And most of the founders that you read about, they built consumer apps and they were the customer, right? They were college kids or Snapchat or Facebook. And so you just assume like, oh, that's how you build a company. Well, those are consumer apps, and they knew their consumer. So if you're building the next great AI enterprise app, well, who's out there building those great apps now? Go work for them and understand what they're doing well. And that's if you like, it's hard sometimes if you don't have a great resume to get on board those companies, but you can sometimes find something unique you can offer or do. But I always think it's better to learn from someone else. And then when you launch, kind of have a bit of an unfair advantage, because most of these founders that are successful, they have those. Like they don't advertise it when they tell their story, but a lot of times they had like some enterprise customer, either, a lot of times it's like a family member that gives them a leg up, that worked at a major company, and oh wow, we have a Fortune 500 customer that pays us $10,000 a month that just also happens to be my uncle or my dad. And so they don't tell that story when they go on podcasts. So that's kind of what you're up against. So if you don't have that, then go get that. Go build relationships in your industry that you can leverage, because these other founders you read about, they probably have those.
Are you saying that your dad is a high up at Delta? No, I think what you said is a very interesting distinction around one can start a consumer business, a B2C business, maybe from intuition or from your experience, or, because we're all consumers, we're all users. But I really like your distinction. What I heard from it is that the B2B side is so much harder because it really takes somebody with expertise. Like it's really hard to sell into an industry that you've never done before. You don't know how it works. I
have any relationships.
You have no relationships.
Yeah.
You don't even know how to price things. You don't even know the language, because there's so much language that these businesses use. And if you don't speak their language, they know you're an outsider, and it's very difficult to sell into those places. So I think that's very, very good advice to learn.
Yeah. And people also don't always buy the best products. I mean, you can look at some of the products that they use at massive companies. They're horrific. I mean, they still have like the green screen, and they don't even have like some of these products, they don't even have a UI. And it's because for whatever, like switching costs are high, and there's relationships that are deep. And so you're up against that. So it is hard to kind of attack an industry that you don't have any relationships at all.
All right. As we wrap, if you can, any plugs you want to have, or how should people reach you and get in touch?
I'm on Twitter. I'm not that active. I kind of, I'm just a fly on the wall. I don't really do too much there, but you can follow me at Alex Skatell. And then check out, I would recommend if you're a founder and you're like, how in the world am I going to afford to handle my growth? I built this great product. I have no idea how to find the right growth stack and have a team to help me with marketing and advertising and lead gen and automations. And it's making me crazy. I'm not a marketing guy or a sales guy. I'm a product guy. Please, please, please come to topline.com, go find Butler and sign up. Like, we can help you with that side. It's $3.97 a month, and you can, try it out. It's such a low cost. If you're not happy, you're not going to find anything cheaper. So, or a better value. So, I mean, I think it's really the ones we've seen, you have to kind of commit to it yourself a little bit too, but at least you have support, you have resources. And that's where Topline Butler can really be helpful for startup founders, and even, obviously startup consultants, consulting firms, advisors, that kind of thing too.
Awesome. Last question. This is a new thing we do here, which is share kind of a life hack or something you've learned recently that's helped you and might help others. I'll go first so you guys think about it. And I got into this thing called ADP list, ADP as in like the security system, but adplist.org. And it's like a mentorship website. It's free, and it's free to both receive mentorship on any topic like product, or like you were mentioning, startups or career, but also be a mentor. And such a great community. I was blown away by how awesome it is. I got connected with this random guy in Romania, and he's been such a joy to mentor. But I think it can go both ways, and highly recommend it.
I can go. So we maybe 3 weeks ago rolled out. So I use Zapier. I love Zapier. All the automations. I love it. If there's something, most of the issues I have in my life, I have found I can fix with Zapier. Not all of them, but we started this at 8 a.m. every day. A little Zapier bot wakes up. It looks up some data. So it looks up how many how many demos do we book yesterday? How many deals do we close? What's the current revenue? So it collects all this data, comes from a spreadsheet, and then it just dumps it into this channel. So 8 a.m. every day, we get in this cadence. And it sounds so silly because you might say, well, because I said for years, we already talk about this data. We already look at it. We have meetings about it. But what I found is that the fact that it happens Monday through Friday at the same time every day, and it's just a very simple, no nonsense little bot that spits out the numbers. That's all it does, just spits out the numbers. And it's the old adage of what you measure, you can change. And just by looking at the numbers, so each day it makes me, like yesterday, I noticed one of the numbers was trending lower, and like over the previous 3 days, and it made me think, why is that happening? What's going on there? Whereas that may have taken me a month to figure out on my own, or 2 months if it kept trending that way. So we integrate it with Google Sheets. So I have a Google Sheet that has all these formulas in it to pull in the numbers. And then the Zapier just goes and looks at that day, pulls in all the numbers from that cell, from that row. It's a great hack. So it's great. Highly recommend.
Nice. I'm writing both of those down. So mine would be, there's this, if you have a Mac, it's an app called Datto. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. And if you're like me and you're constantly bouncing around into different Zoom meetings and you kind of tend to run 2 or 3 minutes late, they have a feature that will literally take over your entire screen, and you can set the time. I have it set for 1 minute before my next meeting. It takes over my entire screen and says, you have a meeting in 1 minute, click here to connect. And you can just click on it and instantly connect to your meeting. And it has saved me so many times. I forget about a meeting and it just takes over your entire screen, and you just click, join the meeting. And so I've got Chris on it, Joey on it. And it's my favorite hack right now, is just having that just prevent me from being late to meetings.
That's so cool. I do see you can snooze it though. Do you ever snooze it?
I do. I snooze it a lot, but I set it. So I used to set it for 5 minutes before, and I would snooze it, and then I'd forget about it, and end up being late anyway. And so now I do it 1 minute before. So I'm like, okay, I can't snooze it because it literally starts in 30 seconds. So yes,
that's awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on Founder Secrets. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.